recording part. Hopefully this will work for him. We'll see. Okay, I think... Oh, whoops. Guess I didn't finish hitting the Craig command.
Now recording.
There we go. Much better.
Nice.
And... Turn off. There we go. Okay, cool. I think that should get it pretty well. All right. Ready on my end? Ready on yours?
Already over here.
All right. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, go. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Gamenomicon podcast. This is Will speaking by myself this week. This is a segment of the Will and Jerod Make a Podcast where we're interviewing some other creators kind of about their experience and how they got started, how it's going, some of the different specialties and different corners of this market that they have dabbled in. I am, of course, Gamenomicon pretty much everywhere you can find me on the internet, Itch and Threads and so on. Jerod, who I think will probably still be posting this video to his channel as well, is Paroxysm by Design. I always have to slow down when I say that. You can find him several places as well, Itch and Drive-Thru and the like. But we are working together on a game called Honorbound that we will be running some crowdfunding for in a bit. And so we are here picking people's brains, trying to glean all the tips and tricks that we can along the way, and hope you guys get some good stuff out of it too. So this week I have the pleasure of announcing Ken. Oh, you know what? I meant to double check if your name is Lowery or Lowery. Which
Lowery.
way? Lowery.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, first way.
That's what I would have guessed, but then I was about to say it and I thought, oh shoot, I did not make sure.
I was waiting to hear how that was going to turn out.
Well, good. Thanks for coming on and joining us, Ken.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I've been enjoying the podcast a lot. I'm really interested to see where Honorbound goes, and I'm really happy to be here.
Well, thanks. Well, I think some folks may have seen and heard of some of your stuff before. I feel we'll probably get to this more in a bit, but I feel like having several awards under your belt now, Ennie and Crit, probably got your name on some people's radar. But how did you kind of get started here?
So I've been playing role-playing games pretty much most of my life. I'm 43 years old, so I'd say about 30 years I've been playing. Off and on, at the very least, I've always had, like all of us, books I've been reading, even if I'm not actively playing them. And I've kind of just wanted to make games for a very long time and never did. I spent a good chunk of my 30s self-publishing comic books, actually, and kind of going down that path. Yeah, about 8 years. Doing a lot of conventions and meeting with artists, and I've been in some anthologies, but it was mostly all self-published stuff. So meaning I paid the page rates and the printing costs and shipping and took them to cons and sold them myself. And in a lot of ways, it kind of prepared me for doing this. It's a lot of very similar skill sets. I jumped over to making games in 2021. Really, it was the first game, Killer Ratings. It wasn't a deliberate decision, I must now make games. It was, I must make this game. Okay. And if I make this thing and push it out and just consider it done, for me, I liken a lot of creative work to like an exorcism, just get it out of me. And then I'm satisfied, and it's like I could stop picking at that scab and it's done.
Right.
So Killer Ratings was the first one, although I did a few very small things leading up to that. I did some game jams and just little one-off tables and things like that, just to get myself in the habit of, okay, here's how to do layout, start a social media presence, and just kind of work my way through in baby steps. So yeah, I put Killer Ratings out in 2021 and honestly just really enjoyed the process, and kept going. I've always sort of had a vague plan, but I've barely ever followed it. I just know the plan basically is just keep doing stuff. And typically I can tell you what the plan is on the next couple of games are, but inevitably something will jump up and jump to the front of the queue. which actually the last three games did. They just said, "Oh, nope, it's my turn," and I turned to them. Yeah, no. So I guess it's been about 3.5 years now, and yeah, pretty lively 3.5 years, honestly.
Yeah, it really
Yeah,
seems like it.
yeah. No, I um, didn't anticipate much of a response to anything. Didn't anticipate. I don't know. I'm just some guy. I'm vaguely aware of the discourse. I'm vaguely aware of the literature. I have a pretty good just gleaning 30 years of RPGs and knowing what I like and knowing what I don't like. Mostly just chasing whims, though. I think primarily I'm known for solo games. That was not the goal when I started out. There is another comic writer, Ryan K. Lindsay, who does some one pagers based on Second Guess, and
Hmm.
that's how I got clued into that. And he's also an English teacher, and I think that was
Oh,
kind of how he
nice.
glommed onto it as like writing exercises. So
Hmm.
he'd run his students through them, and then he designed his own games, and that's where I was like, oh, this is just fun. And it was really that. I was like, oh, as a writing exercise, a role playing game in its basest form, can I present this thing of a table or set of facts, and you can randomly generate and have basically news stories in perpetuity. And that framework really interested me. And yeah, no, it became the thing I just did. Partly because it was, playtesting is relatively easy. I can just do it myself.
Touche.
And yeah, well, I have the typical problem most adults do in getting a regular group together and all that.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah, but no, the solo games really just it was a very intimate process all the way through. And I really enjoyed that piece of I don't know, emotional connection to what I was working on and the ability to do only exactly what I wanted to do. Because that was the only way that things were going to get done,
Hmm.
essentially.
Gosh, you've got my brain going multiple directions for follow ups
Sure.
here. I will start with, I guess, maybe more of a statement or a realization I just made. This was
Hmm.
totally inadvertent, but I just realized almost everybody that we've interviewed or reached out to have scheduling it is involved in solo RPGs at the moment, and I don't know if I've subconsciously done that because I enjoy them, and those are the sorts
Hmm.
of people that I'm following online. Or if it is just that much of kind of in the zeitgeist at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's a fair amount of, and I couldn't tell you comprehensively, but I do think, especially in the past year and a half, it's been everyone at the least trying their hand or doing a solo mode for a group game or some form of just recognition like, oh, this thing has legs. It's something people want, and it does, in a way, provide even in the solo versions of group games, it provides a very distinct experience
Mm-hmm.
within that. And it does kind of nod to that reality of, well, I can't get the group together. Oh, this person's moving, this person's whatever. We might not get together for 6 weeks. What am I going to do in the meantime? And sure enough, I'm working on a group game, and I'm even got thoughts about what are downtime solo games to do that enhance the game for everyone when you come back together.
Nice.
Well, yeah, it's honestly, if I'm being honest, a big part of my background is role playing groups and MMOs, and a lot of that is driven by forums, essentially play by email or play by post, very passive back and forth communications. And a feature of that is it's kind of always on. It's just there when you want to do it, whether that's 3 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon when you're at work and there's some downtime. I'll write a journal for the character, or I'll do a newspaper headline and a news story. And there's something that's always building and enhancing and all this call and response with the rest of your group.
Uh-huh.
So there's always things going on, even when it's not live. And that was always the most interesting part of it, and the part I kept coming back for, not just for what I could do, but seeing what other people do, seeing the different directions they go in and all that. And I just kind of going off on a tangent here, but I just think there's a lot of value in giving people um, methods and modes for self-expression, not just in their own games when they're playing by themselves, but also that they can bring back to their group games to enhance the experience for everyone.
Yeah, no, I really like that. Connecting that downtime
Hmm.
or in between time. Maybe a gaming liminal space here in between sessions. I've never really quite thought of it that way till just now, but
Hmm.
yeah, having that experience that you can connect and bring back somehow, I think is
Sure.
pretty cool.
Yeah. Like every group I've been in, there's been at least one person who's like, they're writing their characters' backstory stuff in between sessions, or they're constantly talking with the GM about what's, what happened before the adventure started. And like, there's people who kind of just want to do that extra credit stuff, or just that much more engaged.
Mm-hmm.
And if you give them something to do, and it kind of enhances the thing for everyone, and I think gives the players greater ownership over the story as a whole, which I think helps break it away from a tendency a lot of group games have, where like the GM is entertaining you and you are an audience.
Right.
This makes you more of a stakeholder in the proceedings, I think. Yeah, no, I just think there's a lot of ways to help encourage that self-expression and help people get more out of their games, whether they're playing alone or playing in a group game.
Well, you thought you were kind of going out on a sideline a moment ago. I'm about to go super overboard here out there, because I can't help but wonder. You mentioned writing things like newspaper headlines for some of your MMO related stuff. And I was sitting here thinking, now, which MMOs would that make sense for? And then I thought, oh, Ken said he's a comic guy. Please tell me it's City of Heroes.
Oh yeah. No, I played City Heroes issue 1, and I was there the night the servers were shut down.
Oh, man, yeah.
Yeah, no, I
I
played
feel you.
8 years or something like that, and then the Secret World is basically what I picked up on right after that.
Oh, okay.
which was horror,
Mm-hmm.
but it was modern setting. It was very much like, oh, you're in modern London, you're in modern New York, whatever. So yeah, no, City Heroes was the training ground, and had a group of it fluctuated some, but between 6 and 10 people. And yeah, no, a lot of it was, well, no one's really meeting up to do something this week, but like, here's a headline that's sort of like, what is the public visible fallout to something the characters got up to last week? Those kinds of
Nice.
things. And yeah, it helps. Again, it kind of helps people stay engaged with what happened, so you don't come back to the table the next time like, what happened last time? Like, you've got your answers right there, and all had a stake in it. But yeah, no, City of Heroes was it. And played a little bit of Homecoming when it came back to. It's still going right now.
Oh,
I don't know
yeah.
if you're
Oh,
okay. Yeah.
I don't play like regularly, but when it let's say officially, here in quotes, came out, I definitely went and recreated all of my characters, and then I log in probably every other month just to basically just to log in. Maybe I'll go do one newspaper mission or something. I need to set aside some time to actually do more with it, but
That's fun.
I don't know. There's nothing MMO wise that I think has connected quite the same way for me.
Agreed. Yeah, no, it was definitely the most fun I had as a group or solo player. Secret World hit some of that, but it was very it felt like a single player game that acknowledged other people were also there. So it wasn't quite the same experience. And much of it you would do alone, and much of the big critical story stuff was solo instance stuff. So it was kind of a hybrid, whereas City of Heroes really felt like, oh, it's fun to just group up with people and do stuff. No, same. I've tried many others. I tried Champions. I tried World of Warcraft. Tried Star Wars: The Old Republic. I tried a bunch, and none of them really. I don't know if it's me or them. Something.
Yeah,
changed.
yeah. I don't know either. Yeah, I think there's a lot out there, and I don't know. Maybe it was also just that time period in my life.
Sure.
It turns out a college student can devote a lot more time to MMOs than
Yes.
an adult with responsibilities.
Yeah, and not be aware of all the responsibilities you're pushing off. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, exactly. Somehow it seemed to make way more sense to blow off a class so I could stay up for task force or something than it makes sense to blow off work the next day.
Yeah. Nope. Agreed with that. And to also be aware, like, oh, I could be doing some game work right now or something like that. Like,
yeah. There is always something like, oh well, I kind of feel bad. I'm sitting down to I don't know, play Star Wars Outlaws at the moment, because that is time that could be spent on this pseudo rework of the Gamenomicon website I've started, or that adventure I promised to write Jerod for Honorbound, or whatever it may be. There's a dozen more projects past that.
always.
Yeah. Well, also on the comic front, before I let that one go, I'm also curious because you mentioned going to a lot of cons and such. Did you ever make it up to Planet Comic Con in Kansas City?
I did not. No, I mostly did. Excuse me. I mostly did Heroes Con, Emerald City. I did C2E2 in Chicago a couple of years in a row. Memphis, Staple down in Austin. I did a couple of one-offs. No Kaz was this like Zine Fest in New Orleans. All around. But no, I kind of followed where my friends were going essentially because people I knew I could table next to or table with.
Hmm.
But no, I don't think I ever. Yeah, I had to skip out on an Oklahoma one and never quite worked my way up from there. But yeah, no, it was those. I kind of hit the coasts,
Yeah.
and yeah, and local area stuff. Um, no, it was honestly a great time. I really enjoyed those experiences. I never got anywhere with comics in 8 years, but I did. It was kind of the friends I made along the way. Uh, ended up being the treasure
Yeah.
of that one. Well, I met a lot of artists, a lot of writers. I learned a lot about process. I learned a lot about pitching. It's just the basic project management of it.
Hmm.
Learned a lot of those things. So I'm very glad I did it. And some of those skills are still very useful right now. But I basically kind of called it quits when I changed jobs in early 2020, and then COVID happened and canceled all the conventions anyway. So it felt
Right.
like a real hard stop. Like, okay, it's over, it's done. You've done that piece. I've still got some boxes of copies of things, but yeah, for the most part, I still friends with all those people. But that's really only my, I might go see Staple again, just down in Austin, just because it was a really good vibes kind of show, and honestly very akin to some of the smaller game shows, just the general spirit of it. But yeah, no, I think I am done probably.
Nothing wrong with that. On to new chapters that you seem to be killing it
Sure.
at. And speaking of, I am kind of curious because those contacts I was figuring
Yeah.
probably artists, and you did say that. Are those some of the artists you've been working with on your
Hmm.
games? And I'm also
Yeah.
curious when you were doing the comic stuff, were you also doing like layout, lettering, that type of stuff that transferred to the RPGs, or are you kind of outsourcing layout and such? How's that going?
Uh, so second question first. When I was doing the comics, I was writing the script, working with the printers, but typically it was the artists who would do the art, assemble the PDFs to print specs. So I basically just took the files from them and kind of made sure they didn't have to do anything but the art, basically.
Gotcha.
So yeah, no, I didn't typically do the lettering, and part of it is I wanted to hire as many people as possible. I just want people to get paid. So I wanted to make sure, oh, I know some good letterers, I'll hire them. I, know a good colorist, I'll hire them. I probably robbed myself a little bit of an education. Most comic creators will say you need to try lettering at least one comic on your own, even as a writer. If you've got no design sense, which I do not, you need to just know what you're asking, just to learn,
Hmm.
because it makes you that much more aware of what you're putting on your partners,
Yeah, yeah.
and making sure you're not asking for the impossible. I did do a lot of, just for my own personal edification, thumbnailing. Whenever I'd script a page, I would then thumbnail what I was picturing in my head,
Okay.
because that is the quickest way to find out you're asking for something impossible. Two actions in one panel, whatever it is. You're not thinking in that particular way, so that helps you get in the mindset of an artist. Doesn't have to be good. No one but you ever has to see it. But it means you've done your due diligence. And honestly, it's similar to, for straight writing, just walking around and reading it out loud so you can find where you're stumbling over words. But yeah, now I did a little bit of that in comics, but I've done a lot more in RPGs. And yeah, every single, thinking here, yeah, every single cover artist I've met in comics. So running down the list, Benjamin Hall did the cover, excuse me, for Killer Ratings. And he and I did my very first comic story ever, like 15 years ago,
Oh,
actually, probably
nice.
probably closer to
So
20 now.
first
Yeah.
comic and first RPG.
Yeah,
Nice.
and he's a big horror guy, and local, honestly, to me as well. So that felt like the right thing. He turned in a great cover because I was very like, hey, let's do like Bronze Age horror comic. And then he delivered that, and worked with a comic book letterer named Josh Crack, to do I did the title design, but he did all the layout on the cover to, again, kind of make it look like a comic book. And then from there, Sally Canarino did the cover for Lighthouse at the End of the World. And she is kind of in both worlds. She did Cobwebs with World Champ Game Company, but she's also done a fair amount of comic book work herself, and her partner also writes RPGs. Jordan Witt did the cover for Void 1680 AM. Jordan and I did a comic a million years ago, based on their ongoing webcomic organization of Ghost Hunters. And a piece of fan art Jordan did ages ago, actually kind of in a weird way inspired Void. So I knew I had to hire them for that. Like, you are the person for this. And then most recently, No Tell Motel, Sean McGaughan did the cover for that and all the NPC art. And he and I have done 4 or 5 stories together.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, mostly in this horror anthology called Boo. It hadn't come out in a while. It was mostly digital. But we just have, when it comes to horror, crime, whatever, we have very similar sensibilities. And I knew I wanted pulpy and a little bit sexy and a little bit whatever. Like, and I knew he was the guy for that. It was just one of those like, oh, it's Sean. It's got to be Sean. And it's honestly a big part of how I think about a game when I'm in the early stages. I start to imagine who is my dream artist for this.
Okay.
Because that helps me find the tone. That helps me figure out, with Sean, the way he draws figures, the way he does shadows, like there's a certain tone you're going to go for. Similar with Sally, with Ben on Killer Ratings, which is horror, but also kind of fun and silly. Like it just, for me, nailing down that tone or voice for a game is one of the first things I have to do, before I like really start busting out copy, or whatever. Like, I can get an outline down or whatever, but I need to know what this game feels like to read, to look at, to hold in your hand. And picturing an artist, even if they don't end up being the artist, or, if they're a historical artist I have no, chances of working with, it still helps me figure out what this game should feel like, and from there I can do almost everything else.
Nice.
But yeah, and then sorry, to that point.
Oh, no problem.
I've done layouts for almost everything. The only one I didn't was No Till Motel. Hired Kelsey Zorneman, who is someone I worked with just in my day job, and I knew she was a fantastic designer, with a real grasp of kind of mid-century vibes, for lack of a better word. So I knew she'd be the one for this. And I feel like everything I've done up to that point looks all right, but I feel like it's the absolute limit of my ability as a layout person, because even if I can kind of picture what I want something to look like, I'm just a writer. At the end of the day, I am just a guy who writes. So I can fake it a little bit, and I think Void was probably the upper limit of what I can do on layout, and it looks good. I think it looks good, but at this point, I was like, well, okay, I've got a little more visibility. I probably have a chance to raise a little bit more money. Let's hire someone. And again, like I say, it's important to me to be hiring people and paying them good rates and making sure basically I'm not the only one benefiting from any of these doing well.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be the rising tide, basically.
I like that. And I think that seems to be a common sentiment. And particularly I feel like that's a common sentiment among the folks that I notice doing well in this industry and space. I mean, I think we all know it's not necessarily go buy a private island sort of doing well,
Right.
but the folks whose names you see, the acclaim, the folks that have the popular stuff, I think it's pretty common that they have that outlook of getting people paid, of the rising tide lifting all ships kind of thing.
Yeah.
Everybody's been super cool on that front.
Well, it's, and this is something I carry over from comics as well as a bit of a grudge, to be honest, is that those artists mostly get paid terribly, and mostly don't get paid on time either. And I just felt like it just doesn't have to be this way. Like, so it's almost a conscious effort to pull those people I think are great but underappreciated and make sure they get paid and recognized.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's just like, okay, well, here's a better way to do it. And just, if that's, one little extra feather in their cap, it, makes their quarter, every time they get a quarterly payment, just a little bit better. Great. But yeah, no, I felt like there was this wellspring of talent there that's not being respected. So I don't do games as my day job. I have a day job, so I don't need to make money. I need to not lose money. I need to not lose it.
Right,
but,
right.
But aside from not losing money, the rest can just, can go to paying people out and generally making sure everyone benefits. And one, I think it's better if everyone's motivated for something to succeed because they see something from that. But two, I don't know. I think it creates a better atmosphere, which ultimately creates better work, and everyone's more excited and more likely to bring new ideas. And I think that's just generally a positive environment, and it starts with paying them what they're worth, or at the very least, getting closer than they're used to.
Right,
Um,
right.
yeah,
And the more they can get used to that, even at least if it's closer, the
yeah,
more other folks can get used to that, and
hmm,
it may not be a one and done thing, but hopefully it's moving the needle in the right direction.
that's the hope. Yeah, bit by bit.
Well, if I might jump
Hmm.
backward a little bit in the discussion, there I've noticed from what you were talking about with your comic experience, you mentioned several
Hmm.
different kind of, or at least a few different horror projects, and it definitely seems like your RPGs kind of lean somewhere in the horror to at least, let's say, dramatic suspense
Yeah,
range,
yeah.
with No Tell and 1680. And my favorites, for personal reasons, but also just because the name is amazing, Axe Wielding Priest. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm kind of curious. Is this a deliberate choice on your hand? Is that just the type of themes you're interested in exploring?
Mm.
What kind of trips that trigger for you?
Yeah, I guess it's never a conscious choice. What genre am I going to move into next? I do have broad thoughts. Like a couple of discords I'm in are aware of the fact I'm thinking about vampires right now. And my exercise tended to be, especially when I was writing comic books, was if there's a genre or a trope or something I'm really into that I can't stop picking at, I'm going to sit and figure out, okay, what about it works for me? Why am I continuously drawn to this? And typically, I can find something in there, the nugget of that creates a story. I wrote a comic that to me is cyberpunk, although it doesn't look anything like it's not neon, it's not LA, it's not any of that stuff, but the themes and the worldview and all that are cyberpunk to the core. And there's a little bit of that in games, but honestly, a lot of it is, I think it's just the kind of input I've got, the stuff I'm reading, the stuff I'm watching, the stuff I'm listening to. And some of them are long-standing threads of interest in mine that just sort of like coiled up with each other and announced themselves, for lack of a better word. Axe Wielding Priest was, God, I was watching, I think, Prince of Darkness, the John Carpenter movie, and I was thinking about the priest in that one and the priest in a couple other different movies, who's always this figure of only I see the truth and no one believes me.
Mm-hmm.
And what became Axe Wielding Priest, which yeah, I'm also quite proud of, honestly, as a title and just a concept, as like, oh, like let's just be this figure. And the cool thing with the second guess is, of course, the second guess thing, where the fun of designing for it is, okay, so what is the trick when you land on something a second time? And something about, and I have not examined this and probably should, perhaps with professional assistance, but a thing that I come back to often in games and game design is um, paranoia, betrayal, a discord between what is presented and what is real. And I think Second Guess is an amazing vehicle for that. Like just that's basically what it's designed to do. But like, yeah, there's a little bit of that in Killer Ratings. The bigger game I'm working on right now called Saint of Blades is all about this sort of like intergroup tension of who's going to turn on who.
Okay.
Um, and I think it goes back to probably the first big game I ever really got into was all the White Wolf games, Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf the Apocalypse and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And part of their system was nature and demeanor. And nature is kind of your core self, and demeanor is how you present yourself. And often they're different. And the idea is that you're sort of presenting yourself to the world one way, but there's a motivator inside you that's driving you slightly differently. And it sounds duplicitous. It's not really. It's just like, oh, this person's kind of a martyr, but they tend to be highly productive. So there's their nature and demeanor. Anyway, I don't know. I've always liked that conflict, and that's been sitting with me a long time. So it emerges in a lot of what I do. Void 1680 AM is like, I've always fantasized about having a radio station. I worked in radio briefly about 20 years ago. Um, I have a radio tower on top of the garage that I'm pointing to right now that you
Oh,
can't see.
nice.
Yeah, no, and that was like Void 1680 AM existed as a radio station before it existed as a game. So like it is quote unquote real in the sense that it does broadcast, it does have power going to the tower. I do have the little box to hook up to, and all that. And it was really just, can I pull these threads of things I like, figure out what I like about them, and make them something that is presentable to other people that they can do something with. And it's, in that way, it kind of comes back to that exorcism idea. And yeah, no, I tend to favor horror concepts, thriller concepts, dark concepts in the sense of really testing who you are as a person, really interrogating who you are as a person. And some of the games are a little more gentle about it than others. Void is honestly, when I initially wrote it, it was much darker than it is now. And I
Okay.
decided to pull back the tone on it and say, okay, well, that's how I would play it. But if this whole thing is about self-expression, I need to let other players decide the tone of their
Okay.
game.
Did some of
But
that then go into the expansion that I forget the name of?
yeah, Voices in the Void is like,
Yes.
okay, here's if I had just like turned that dial up some, and just said, okay, here's because originally it was going to be a Wretched and Alone thing. There was going to be like you've got the Jenga tower going, and like, is the station going to get shut down? Is our ratings like a thing that you're dealing with? Is there dark, weird, supernatural stuff going on? And I kind of stripped all that out before I got to the core idea. But it's kind of, I don't know. I still think it's there on the fringes, and Voices in the Void just really like puts it front and center. All of that is a very long-winded way to say I think I just steep myself in those stories and those tones, and the dramatic and the uncertain, and I tend to really resonate with stories that are almost a crucible for the characters. So that tends to be what I make, and they're maybe half and half genuine capital H horror. But I think anything that's not is at least next door. Just kind of like working in some of the same realms and some of the same interests and I don't know, worldview.
Nice. Well, no worry. Multi-part response here from me. Number one, no worries about being long-winded. That is what we are here for. We're
All
here to
right,
listen to
cool,
you talk.
cool.
I'm just lucky if I can give you a good prompt to make you long-winded.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Very good.
um,
Very good.
Past that, I want to say thank you for the kind words on second guess. For
Sure.
any listeners that maybe aren't aware, this is a real treat for me, I guess, having somebody on that has done some work with an SRD that I created. So anytime I can hear other people excited about that sort of thing, that is a huge win in my book. So that's super cool. And
It,
and
well,
it's,
it,
oh, go ahead.
if I may, further flattery for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Because I've
please
definitely
do.
messed, yeah. Well, I've definitely messed with different solo systems and different things I like, and I've done a Wretched and Alone game and all that. But I think Second Guess got at the thing I value most. It's very potent, it's very repeatable, and it's very simple. As a concept, it's literally one-page games, and that is something cross media, movies, books, whatever. I love a simple concept that you can iterate on pretty much endlessly. And I feel like that's it. Like I feel like that's the one that um, either got me or made me get solo games. And
Awesome.
honestly, yeah, No Tell Motel is like basically a jumped up version of a second guess game. Like it's bigger and that there's more mechanics going on, but
Right.
it's still there's still this doubt mechanic that's creeping in while you're playing. That's starting to like cast doubt on how well you know what you think you know. And what is that if not a second guess game? So anyway, thank you for making that. It was very influential for me and very helpful to get me going.
Oh, thank you. I've
Hmm.
actually it's you can't quite see the angle, but the cat over here, man, it's hard to point correctly in the window.
Uh-huh.
But there's a box directly on the other side of the cat, and No
Hmm.
Tell Motel, the copy that you were kind enough to send me, is sitting right there because I it is like at the top of my I need to sit down and play this soon pile.
Hmm.
I flipped through it. It seems super cool, and thank you so
Hmm.
much for that little blurb, the little thank you in there. So
Yeah.
it is one I'm very excited to try.
Cool. Well, I'm glad
Um,
to hear it.
yeah. Uh, Related to that, I was going to say I remember when Axe Wielding Priest came out, that I watched an actual play of that, and now I can't
Yes.
remember. Did you actually do that actual play, or was
I
that
didn't.
somebody else that did it?
That was someone else. Oh, I'm struggling to remember because he was really enthusiastic about it. And no, he did an actual play of it, and it's funny. He kept hitting the same number. He just kept
Oh
hitting it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was his priest. had someone come into his, one of the prompts was something about someone coming into your confession booth to confess something, and I think he hit it 4 times in a row, or something like just something absurd,
Goodness.
or he did like 3 and then something else and then he hit it again.
Yeah.
So it really like steered his game a certain way. It still worked.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
It
it
just
was,
it wound up being shorter than anticipated, if
yeah,
I remember right.
yeah, yeah, no, no, that was, I did one before that with Second Guess called The Getaway, which was just a simple kind of generate a car chase type deal, and the building threat was essentially the cops catching up to you. But I feel like Axe Wielding Priest was the first one where I like got it.
Hmm.
Basically like, this is what this is for. This is the system in play, and it's such a fun and to me nasty little concept that you can be this righteous monster hunter and no one believes you, and there's this kind of niggling doubt that they might be right to not
Yeah.
trust you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that might just be in your head, and that can be a tough topic for some folks. But yeah, no, I just liked that mounting feeling of paranoia, and again, kind of thinking of that priest in Prince of Darkness, and just is it in the back of his head this whole time? What if I'm completely wrong about everything? And what does that mean for everything I've done and everything I'm thinking and all that? And I just felt like that gave it, I don't know, a little extra jolt of horror.
Oh yeah. That
Yeah.
that uncertainty. I think that's one that really nails that.
Hmm.
I don't know. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there with the just that like niggling doubt, and
Hmm.
sometimes that's more unsettling
Hmm.
than more concrete things.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, oh, I love that. I love that. On the AP front though, I'm super curious because I
Hmm.
had no idea you had a like functional radio tower there
Yeah.
basically. Have you yet just like broadcast an AP of you playing 1680 like
Oh
from
yeah.
the radio tower?
Yeah, so it's kind of a throwaway page at the end of the thing. I just thought, oh, this would be a fun little thing to do. Or I told people, if you submit your playlist and your voice breaks as a DJ to me, I'll broadcast them,
Oh
and
wow.
stream 'em on YouTube and all that. It was like, cool, okay. It's like I'll do this. Maybe one person ever will do this. I think by now I've done close to 50, um, and a few of my own as well. I did a few to sort of kick it off and kind of like, at least here's my tone, here's how I would do it.
Hmm.
And I did one for like No Till Motel when the crowdfunder for that one launched. And I did one when Knave of Cups picked up Void 1680 for the first time. So I did like a broadcast just shouting them out. Um, but otherwise it's just when other people submit shows, which has been several times in the past couple of years. Yeah, no, I've got a YouTube playlist going of all of them. I do like a little intro, up front, up top, good evening. Welcome back to Void 1680 AM. I am, as always, the program director, et cetera, et cetera. And then I'll give kind of a little intro and then just turn it over to their mix and just run the board after that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll be in like the YouTube chat because I'll broadcast and stream at the same time, because unless you're within 2 miles of this house, you're not hearing it on the radio.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
I'm not telling you my address.
Oh
But
no, certainly
yeah,
not. But have you
yeah,
have you heard whether anyone has actually listened to it
I don't know.
through
It's
broadcast?
I don't know. I'm in my little suburban neighborhood. I've kind of surreptitiously placed stickers all over the place, like on the back of stop signs and stuff.
Love
Just
it.
Void 1680 AM. So possibly, I don't know. And honestly, that mystery is something I love.
Yeah.
On my end, not knowing, and on the other end, envisioning, because there's also a high school in this neighborhood. So God knows if some teenagers just futzing around on the dial and like, what the hell is this? like
Love
like I
it.
want that experience. Yeah, and I don't know. I feel like that's kind of the intrigue of it, is this sort of asymmetrical communication method. It's all one way. You don't really know, and that to me resonated as the like metaphor for the creative experience. Is you might get some feedback when you put a game out there, but you don't really know
Right.
who all's playing, how it responded to them. Something that you might have put out there and thought was like a C- effort might be someone else's most important game they've ever played. Like you just don't know. And I felt like that one and Lighthouse honestly are both just kind of coming to terms with that reality of making stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I just yeah, no, that started as a radio station first and then became a game when I tried to figure out how can I systematize building a playlist. Because it's just something I've done a whole bunch my entire life. Yeah, no, maybe someone in the neighborhood's listened. I don't know. I've tested the boundaries. I've driven around in my car
Oh yeah.
while the test signal goes, and I have the signal up, and I know how far it stretches, and it goes to the high school over there, the grocery store over there. Like there's like little population clusters that could potentially pick it up, but I don't know who's futzing around on their AM dial anymore. So,
Probably
um,
not that many,
yeah,
sadly.
probably not
Yeah.
many. Probably not. Yeah.
But still a cool concept, and I love you mentioned enjoying the idea of that asynchronous communication. So now I want to put a little bug in your ear. If
Sure.
you ever have some ideas kicking around for some kind of asynchronous play by post
Hmm.
or epistolary type of game or something, let me know. I'd be very curious to see what you did with that kind of thing.
Okay, well, I've got something I can send you now. I've got it's a small game, but it's an epistolary two-player game that I'm figuring out now. You get like, ooh, and it's basically true to form. It's basically two solo games that have a point of contact.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but yeah, it's based on Voyager 1, the space probe, and specifically a real long article, blog post. I don't know what it was about Voyager 1 and about the ever shrinking mission control that was responsible for it. And it just made it seem so lonesome that it's this, it's gone far, far past its mission parameters. It's still broadcasting. Most of its equipment is still good, but some pieces are starting to fail. And there's just these weirdnesses about it, like the programming language is bespoke to Voyager 1 and no one knows how it works anymore. It is a truly
Oh,
unique. Yeah,
wow.
so I guess it was made before NASA made it policy to always create a duplicate, an exact duplicate of anything to sit in at home here on Earth. So they could study it just in case they need to figure out how to do repairs or whatever.
Gotcha.
They didn't do that for Voyager 1. So it is out there. It is increasingly less understood. It is increasing, like its mission control is like in a strip mall in San Diego, if I'm recalling correctly,
Oh,
like really
wow.
yeah, it's just this very strange, lonesome, whatever. So I kind of started talking through doing an epistolary game. One side is the space probe, one side is mission control, and you kind of have this game of gradual system decay that causes you to redact the messages you're sending back and
Mm.
forth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's and you've got measures and means to kind of like stave off that decay for a time. But inevitably, whether in the manner of a typical epistolary game, someone loses interest and the game just stops,
Oh, right.
or one of you can't communicate anymore because the technical difficulties are too great. And part of it is not knowing, like it just ended. Why did it end? Don't know. Did the
Yeah.
players lose interest? Don't know. Or did the system kind of, I'm getting these messages that are so completely garbled. Does it even make sense to continue talking? It's just and that's kind of what I'm trying to deal with. It's again, yeah, that asynchronous communication. I'm thinking about setting up a Discord where people can have channels that's just them and their counterpart,
Yeah.
only communicating in character, no chatter about the game outside of it. Just so one to have a dedicated space to do that, and two to give a gallery for other people to watch these stories unfold. But
Oh, I hadn't thought about that, about other
yeah,
folks at least being able to view it while it goes
yeah,
on. That
yeah. I
could
would
be
keep the
fascinating.
Yeah, I would keep the channel like read only except for the two players and me.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise say, like, please don't talk about the game out of character. Don't like talking. How's it going? What are we going to do next? Like the whole idea is this is the only lane of communication.
Yeah.
Is these like complications? Yeah, I don't know. I don't. My Discord foo is not strong. I need to figure that out.
Oh, mine's
How to?
not great either, but
Yeah.
it does. I do what I can.
Yeah. But yeah, no. I'll send that. I'm just now entering layouts. I've just got a cover done in true fashion. I built a playlist again to help me kind of nail down the tone of it. And yeah, it's not going to be as big as the other games. It's going to be like a 10-page PDF, like $5, something like that. But that's part of the point is I want to make sure I'm making smaller games, just exploring ideas
Yeah.
as well. So yeah, I'll get that to you.
Yeah. I would be fascinated to check out that Discord. I would love to participate if you get that up and going.
Sure.
That sounds super cool. Um, and you mentioning being a new one that's nearly ready to go. I think maybe points us in the direction of some of the other stuff that I did specifically want to hit on with you,
Sure.
which is about funding. I know you've released some stuff just direct to sale, shall we say, I
Hmm.
guess.
Hmm.
But you've also done crowdfunding. I think you said you've done some itch funding
Hmm.
as well. And you've done things on different platforms and not just the behemoth that is Kickstarter these days. So I think that's definitely something I'm curious about, and that may benefit some of our listeners that are also kind of trying to get things going, about what led you to these other places
Hmm.
rather than Kickstarter, and how has the experience been, plus or minus. Maybe you're going to keep trying some others. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. Some background. I've done, I guess, counting itch funding, I've done 3 different sites. So for killer ratings a few years ago, I did Indiegogo, more or less because it was the other one I knew of at the time. I don't think BackerKit was up and running at that point. At any rate, it was what I was familiar with, and a fair amount of comic projects go through there and all that. So I just knew of it, knew how it operated. And then I did No Tell Motel this year on Crowdfunder. And then in between with Void and Lighthouse, I did itch funding, where yes and no, it was crowdfunding. I was essentially crowdfunding the print run, but the games were written, laid out, like they were done as
Mm-hmm.
PDFs. And I think I even set it up where as soon as you did the pre-order, you got the PDF
Okay.
right there on the spot. So it was really just help me fund getting these books printed, and then you'll get your copy cheap, yeah, and I don't love the stranglehold Kickstarter has on everything, but I acknowledge fully it has the kind of organic discoverability no one else has. If you're on Kickstarter, well, it's the thing about Kickstarter is it is kind of it is marketing, like it is your marketing.
Yeah.
If you're on there, and it gives you a longer story than launch day. It gives you the kickoff day. It gives you all the weeks in between. You've got your stretch goals, and we hit an X number of hours, and it creates a story when pretty much nothing else in the market does that. Nothing else makes you more than a blip on day one, and nothing, and then everything after that is everything you are manually doing, or lightning strikes and someone else posts about it, or does as an actual play or whatever, things you can't control.
Right. Right.
Um, so I just kind of wanted to check other platforms and see how they did. And are there ways I can push them, or is there fertile territory here? Because Kickstarter is a big plus and it helps you, and I probably would have made more money each time if I'd done it there. But also, it's much louder. It's a much louder marketplace. And I didn't want to do Zine Quest and all those things because there's just 10 million other projects going on, and I wasn't super interested in competing with all that. What I found, honestly, for both Indiegogo and Crowdfunder, even though I did Crowdfunder during what was clearly their counter programming month for Zine Quest, is every single dollar I raised, I personally drove there. Through Instagram
Yeah.
ads or Tumblr or TikTok or whatever it was. Just there was not that extra. It might have been 5%, maybe 10% came from people on the site browsing stuff, or from that site, from Crowdfunder or Indiegogo's social media pushing there,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. And it wasn't like I was, killer ratings wasn't a lot. It was like 2K, although, and I was also a nobody, and that was 3.5 years ago. Um, No Till Motel did a little bit better, enough that I think I was the second or third highest raise or highest funding RPG that quarter for them, and it wasn't a lot. It was like 5K, something like that. But not a lot comparatively compared to the big Kickstarter stories. Not a lot.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah,
Compared
yeah,
to, I don't know, Seven Sea or Shadow of the Weird Wizard
yeah,
or
yeah,
Avatar or whatever.
yeah. Your various we made 25K in a day kind of places.
Yeah.
Yeah, so compared to those, it was still not big, but it was big enough to make a bump there, and yet that still didn't drive a lot of. And Crowdfunder gave me some good tools. I can custom URLs so I can see where traffic was coming from. Use this one for Instagram, this one for Facebook, this one for Tumblr, whatever. And they were great on a customer service front. I ran into an issue, or I guess I misunderstood something or whatever on shipping, and when I launched, shipping on everything was like $15 or more, which was not what I'd set it to. It was
Oh.
supposed to be
Uh-oh.
like 5. So people were like, putting in $20 and then another $15 in shipping. And they like got on the phone with me on a Sunday and helped me figure it out. So props to
Okay.
Crowdfunder for that.
Okay. That's
Um,
cool.
Yeah. So they were invested and they cared. But yeah, it was just inevitably I every dollar, at least that I'm aware of, that pushed me over was something I drove there,
Hmm.
from Twitter, from Blue Sky, from various other social media outlets. So they are fine in the sense that they are like, I don't know, the way Gumroad is fine for selling PDFs. They will do the literal transactions. They will print you out your CSV of addresses and all that, but you're not getting anything else.
The whole
Um,
ecosystem, so to speak,
yeah,
is not established the same
yeah,
way.
yeah. As a just straight up storefront, fine, totally fine. And honestly, those pieces from platform to platform aren't that different functionally. So yeah, really the X factor is other people seeing your stuff. And I'm kind of debating now. The next thing I go through crowdfunding will probably be substantially bigger. So it feels like Kickstarter's inevitable. I don't know why I'm kicking and screaming about it at this point, but I
Yeah.
am.
I mean, there's
Um,
also GameFound and BackerKit. I was going to
uh,
ask if you had any thoughts on those.
yeah, I'm very interested. I have not looked at GamePound a lot, but that name has come up a few times. Like I'm aware of it. I just
Yeah,
haven't kind
yeah.
of really looked at the numbers. And BackerKit, I've seen people do really well, but at least as far as I can tell, and this is anecdotal, but it seems to be people who have a big established audience.
That's kind of what
Um,
I was thinking too.
yeah,
Especially for a while there, I think BackerKit was kind of invite only, like they were inviting some big projects. I
yeah,
think it's opened up now, but I have not actually followed up to make sure of that.
yeah. As far as I know, it is, and I do see it a lot more often now. And I know some places prefer to move through there. Like I think MythWorks does everything through there. And I don't know why that. Maybe they got some kind of arrangement. I don't know. But yeah, I think it's one of those where yes, it's good, and I think the features are pretty robust, both like pre, during, and after the campaign. Although I haven't really messed with any of that stuff. A lot of my thinking about crowdfunding is about 10 years old. I should warn you now.
Oh,
Yeah, like basically it's the campaign and then it's dead. But which is not how it works for most
yeah.
people now. But
I wish it would be easier for me to like stay on top of then.
yeah, no, yeah, I get it. But yeah, no, backer kit would be my next move if I'm not going with Kickstarter. That's probably where I'd go. Although I do need to look at GameFound a little more, and I've gotten better about figuring out, especially with No Tell Motel, how much I'm spending to promote and where I'm and seeing kind of where the results are,
Hmm.
and where people are like, oh, people on the social media site are mostly looky loos, and people on this one actually buy stuff, and I'm sort of informally testing that month over month, because I just I am very aware of the fact that outside of having a Kickstarter, most games just disappear as soon as they premiere.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to find savvy ways to stay top of minds, keep topping it off, and keep because there's
Kind
always more people who haven't
kind
heard of
of
it. And
trying to create that long tail basically.
yeah, basically, yeah, it's the I'm in advertising, and what my previous client would call the sustain period, which is basically you have your launch and then about 4 weeks of launch, and then you're into sustain, which is just keeping things bumped. Just keep it every now and then. Um, and I'm trying to find ways to do that aren't just me incessantly posting about it on my own social media channels
Oh
to
man,
the
you figure
annoyance.
those out? Would you let me know? Because I
Sure,
I
yeah,
I feel horrible promoting my own stuff.
yeah,
Honestly, like I don't know. It just winds up feeling almost disingenuous to me
yeah.
to keep doing it. But I know that it is sort of a requirement and something that like just kind of has to happen, or like you said, you just drop out of people's like consciousness.
Yeah, well, it's a simple reality of social media, and it's hard to internalize because I also get squeamish about it. Is that people aren't seeing everything you post, even the people who follow you and follow you somewhat
Oh,
closely.
right, right.
Like they're just, never mind when you get into algorithms, just sheer attention span. They're not seeing it. So a lot of times, the 10th time you post about something is gonna be someone's first time they saw it, and that is just true. But it is hard to internalize, and yeah, it's the thing, and this is a lesson I've tried to instill in clients working in advertising is like I'm showing you 30 posts in a row, so you're feeling bummed out and drained and over mentioning the stuff too much. The people who follow you are not going to see all 30 of these in a row. They're going to see
Oh
two of
yeah,
them
that
over three
that's a good
weeks.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's that chills me out about it a little bit. But no, it's still a little. So I've had the most fun honestly with Tumblr, because from what I can tell, they like long form blog posts basically, which is not true of basically any other social media that I can think of, except I don't know, maybe Mastodon or something. Um, and they seem interested in when you blaze a post, as they call it, put money behind it to be seen by more people. Um, they recognize that and they boost it if it's something that they like, and like, oh, this is Blaze, but I really dig it. Check it out. Like it's feels a little more community. Feels a little more like, oh, this is genuinely of interest to me. Hey, I'm sharing something because I really like it. And that's how I try to stay genuine, is try to remind myself why I like something I made, which also can cause some squeamishness. And just hone in on that. Like, here's what I think is really cool. Alternately, here is what people seem to respond to. Maybe you will as well.
Hmm.
And that one's a little less squeamish, because it's not about me anymore, and I don't have to like sit there and like, oh, I did this cool thing. It's just, oh, people really like this feature, and here's how it works, and just laying it out there and being transparent and being excited about your stuff. And yeah, with Tumblr and Void 1680M, I've done a couple of. I did one that was like, here's a bunch of media influences on the game, movies and video games and music and things. That kind of helped me with the vibe. And here's another one that's like, oh, here is the life cycle of it. Like it started like this and ended like this. And No Tell Motel, I did, here's kind of the basics of how it works with a video of me showing how it works. And then here's some of the artwork, and like people like that stuff. Yeah, so that's yeah, I won't lie. A lot of that testing different marketing strategies is also testing stuff that doesn't make me squirm while I'm doing it. Is is trying to find the things that ride that middle ground between effective and I don't mind it.
Uh-huh.
And honestly, lately I've been trying podcast advertising.
Yeah.
Yeah, partly because I like writing little scripts for those, and also it's a way to put more money back into the community and things I like. So I've done a couple podcasts so far, and it's just podcasts I really like. So I was like, oh yeah, let's give them some money and give them something to do and wish them well and hooray. It's just it's that thing again of trying to make sure everyone gets paid, everyone, because no one in games gets paid what they're worth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I'm, any little bit, I guess. So that way checks a couple boxes. It's marketing, but also it's like putting money back into the community, in places that I believe in.
Nice. I am curious. I know this is likely to vary for different people and different products, especially ones that are hitting different
Hmm.
genres. For instance, like I'm thinking the demographics or potential demographics of, say, your axe wielding priest versus my warmer in the winter. There's
Hmm.
probably not as much overlap in those. So
Hmm.
I'm acknowledging that for all the listeners, that this is not going to be hard and fast rules. But I am curious, in the
Hmm.
stuff that you've kind of been tabulating for yourself, for which social medias have been kind of worth the squeeze and which ones haven't. It sounds like Tumblr is
Sure.
definitely on a worth the squeeze for you. How
Yeah,
about
it's
some of the others?
yeah. So it used to be Twitter, just because that was my kind of home base for social media, and I had a good amount of followers there and all that. But like everyone else, it's just dropped off a cliff in terms of engagement, replies, whatever. Like folks just kind of aren't there. Haven't done Threads, and I probably should. The
I've
algorithm
been
for
really enjoying Threads, for what it's
okay.
worth.
All right. Yeah, it's I don't know, it's one more thing, and like I guess my brain can only take X number of things. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's the perpetual one more thing of all of them. And I mean I jumped on the night it launched and all that. Like I was there, but yeah, no, I think let's see. I would say I've mostly tested, I'm just gonna list them out: Twitter, Blue Sky, TikTok, Tumblr, Instagram, little bit of threads, and then podcasts. And I would say of all the ones, the surest return is Instagram by pretty wide margin. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, and I will say it's that way in my day job too, because I've mostly done social media advertising. Instagram is where people are to buy stuff. Like I couldn't tell you why exactly. I think the demographically, in a broad sense, it hits that millennial group, which by this point is late 30s, early 40s. Typically, a pretty stable job. They've got a little bit of spending money, and for whatever reason, they're on Instagram. They're buying stuff. And every client I've ever had, Instagram has always been the leader.
Okay.
And it's never close. And again, I've got my theories, but I couldn't tell you exactly why. Um, and I haven't messed with Reels too much. I don't know. I'm just not a video format guy. I'm a writer, like I said. No one wants
Yeah.
to look at this doing wacky dances or whatever. But but I mean, just simple photography, just boosted Instagram feed posts, and I'll do stories with short videos or whatever. And those sell like those. Enough that I keep doing it, meaning like I'm making more than I'm spending.
Hmm.
And they're also good in that they're highly adjustable on what you're spending and who you're targeting. And you can be, I want to spend $5 a day for 10 days, or I want to spend $10 a day for 5 weeks. Like you can go all over the place on your scale, and you can drill down a little bit on demographics. It's pretty broad, but you can specify parts of the country and general age group and that kind of thing. So I like Instagram because one, people are buying, and two, it's the easiest to track and the easiest to set and to be able to like, well, okay, I just want to do like $20 over a couple weeks and see how that goes.
Hmm.
Tumblr is super hit or miss. I do enjoy the responses I get. There's more, I don't know, community in it, and the way people they reblog and they'll throw in their little tags, reacting to what you're doing. It feels a little more like a conversation, whereas Instagram is just kind of broadcasting one way with those pieces. It is real hit or miss, and I do think for the most part it's more miss in terms of sales. But I do think it is, if visibility is part of your game, you just want to be seen and talked about and live on past that initial launch. I would probably rate that my number two.
Okay.
Blue Sky is pretty close, but I think that's all me versus an RPG community per se. I've got, I don't know, about 3K followers, and it's a very because it's a relatively young social media site. I think everyone's following everyone because they're actually paying attention right now. It's not a lot of noise, basically.
Yeah.
It is people who are very intentionally there, very intentionally following. So they're more likely to sincerely react versus if you're on Twitter, your follower count might be 1/3 bots and 1/3 dead accounts. I think it's just benefits from being newer. So I have gotten sales from Blue Sky, but I don't know if that's Blue Sky per se driving that. I do think it's probably more fertile ground, and I would guess Threads is the same way. Is that for the most part it's linked to existing Instagram accounts, so it's like it's real people,
Hmm.
and they're actually interested in the people that they're following. But I don't have a lot of insight in how to game Threads or how to post on there. I've done it, like I say, I kind of like I'll do the circuit. Like when I launched the Noto Moto crowdfund, I did Tumblr and Twitter and TikTok and all that. I was like, oh right, Threads. So I did. So there's something up at the end of Threads, and I don't really know if it did much for me, but I don't think that's a reflection of the platform. That's me
Hmm.
not really engaging with it sincerely. And yeah, Twitter is, I do it as a check a box, but it just doesn't move anything anymore, and I refuse to spend money on it. So yeah, like that's just, it's there, and that's where I've had the Bannerless Games account, and like that's, I've got the history there, but other than that, like it's not really factoring into my plans. If I have a small budget, then it's Instagram, maybe Tumblr, and maybe a podcast if they are doing, for instance, like with Dice Exploder, they did as part of their crowdfunding is buy an ad on Dice Exploder, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think Instagram and Tumblr are hard to beat, and you're probably right. You probably onto something with Threads because you're definitely not the first person I've heard say that. That it's a really good RPG community there. I'm just not hooked into it.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of it.
Yeah. No worries. If you ever do jump
Mm.
on, I'll be on the lookout. But no pressure, because I totally agree. There's
Hmm.
too much to keep up with. I don't keep up with Mastodon as much as
Yeah,
I
me
wish
neither.
I did,
Yeah.
despite being a pretty firm believer in the Fediverse concept.
Hmm.
Blue Sky I've got, and honestly, when I do post there, it gets comparatively a lot of
Yeah.
interaction or traction, but it's just so much to keep up
Yep.
with everything and Instagram and
Hmm.
whatever. I definitely echo a lot of your sentiments on Twitter. In fact,
Yeah.
I ran into a weird scenario a couple weeks ago. I'm sure, being at least previously pretty active on Twitter, you're
Hmm.
very aware of Self Promo Saturday as a kind of organized event.
Sure.
So I pop in there. I remember to get back in and like, oh, I should really do this probably once a month. Maybe last time I did it a couple weeks ago, I actually got a notification from Twitter that my account had been restricted for I forget
Oh,
exactly what they called it, something about like whatever sort of activity that they found suspicious about things. And
yikes.
I was like, okay, this is the only thing I've posted here for a week, and I wasn't even like spamming replies on other people's. I just made my own post,
Uh-huh.
like, to my own page.
Good Lord.
Weird. Yeah.
No, that's a bummer. No, honestly, this is part of why I'm testing, and I've
Mm-hmm.
just only really decided in the last month that I've got enough of a war chest on my PayPal account to test these things, is because I feel like everyone's feeling the stress right now. Where do I
Mm-hmm.
even talk about these things anymore? So I'm trying to find answers, basically. And I'm looking at newsletters now. I haven't really sponsored any of those, but I feel like that's where a lot of um, I don't know, curation goes, because they're individual voices, writing these newsletters. People trust their opinions, or understand that at the very least they're being honest.
Yeah.
So that's somewhere, like, is there kind of like with the podcast thing, are there newspapers I really, or newsletters I really like, and sponsor those, and see how that does. And I haven't made formal plans on this front, but I do kind of want to do a big newsletter or blog post about my findings, because
Yeah. Oh, that would
I
be
do,
valuable.
yeah, like I don't intend to keep any of this secret. Like I just, here's what's working, here's what's not. Your mileage may vary on all these things. And I think part of what people might be missing is a lot of it is dirt cheap. Like I said, Instagram, you can do $5 if you want. Tumblr's Blazing starts at 9.99, I think. Like it's all pretty affordable. And Yeah, no, and TikTok's not too dissimilar from Instagram. So like it's all pretty affordable to test, and it's one of those, if you're pulling in $50 a month in games and you want to perpetuate it, here's how to spend 10 of it,
Mm-hmm.
to help with that. So I'm, like I say, nothing formal right now, but this month really, if I wasn't in the middle of a house move, I would be, I would be doing a more robust strategy, so I can like start checking boxes. This worked, this didn't. Here's what I spent here, and do the custom URLs to see who's actually clicking through on stuff. And um, the hardest thing to track is genuine sales from Instagram posts who bought something. But I can at least track where people are clicking through and getting to the store,
Mm-hmm.
from, basically. And I did a lot of that with No Tell Motel, just to really see, because I knew I had more cachet after Void 16 AM, especially, just to like to see, okay, well, what does that mean? Like, like when I'm saying, okay, I made this that you like, here's a new thing, who is responding and where are they responding from? Um, and I know a lot of folks have an aversion to marketing, and I understand it, very much so, and definitely still makes me squeamish to do all this stuff. But at the same time, you have to be your own advocate. You have to be your own advocate because no one else is going to do it for you.
Yeah.
So if it's more comfortable to find, again, to just talk about what you love, or talk about why did you make this, whatever is to you the most comfortable and authentic way to talk about the thing, you need to do it. And put that out there, because it's one of those, it's not like, with the Kickstarter stuff that's really popular, it's a little topical and a little timely, but most games can have a long tail. Most games don't really have an expiration date on them. There are people like, Lighthouse was my first big solo game. That is 2.5 years old now, and people are still steadily buying that. And it's
Nice.
not, yeah, and it's not trend based, and most people's games won't be, and they don't need to be. So yeah, I think it's just learning how to comfortably get that sustainable support, for the titles you believe in, and finding ways to talk about them. I think, one, it helps you, and brings in maybe a little more money, a little more attention on your next thing, whatever. But also, I just like, seeing a diversity of games out there, being talked about different genres, different, group or solo, or epistolary, or whatever. I don't know. I like seeing the variety, and I like seeing, a robust field, just thriving.
Well, you mentioned kind of having some cachet after Void 1680, and I know I promised you 45 minutes to an hour, and I think we're
Yeah,
already a few minutes over the hour. But
all
there
good.
is one other topic related to that I did want to make sure I hit on with you before we called it a day,
Hmm.
and that is kind of how the experience was. Kind of submitting to some of the award shows. Were you
Yeah.
involved in any process after that? How were things for you kind of after the announcement of the win? Did
Yeah.
even better, did you attend the Ennie Award show at Gen Con? Give me
Yeah.
the whole spiel. How was that experience?
Sure. Well, to start off, I mentioned way at the top of this that some of the games just kind of shoved their way to the front of the line, and Void was definitely one of them. And it was just like, oh, I've got this radio station thing, but how, I've got this level of playlists and no, that was I mean, they're all the games I make are for me, but that one was really for me. I did not think I thought it would disappear 1 week after it debuted, and that would have been fine because it was, exercised. I got it out of me. Here it is. I made it happen. It's out of my head now. This is your problem, not mine. So, and it almost immediately really took off. And I couldn't tell you. I still don't know why. Exactly. And I don't mean that like, oh, it's this weird, crazy, stupid game. No one should like it. I don't know why this one and not another one.
Mm-hmm.
But it was this one. And it was pretty much immediate. I put out a press kit the week before the release, and the tweet for the press kit got like 200 retweets. I mean, just like what is happening here?
Nice.
Yeah, I released it March of last year, I want to say, and it didn't exist as a concept in like October the year before. Like it was a fairly quick turnaround of like, oh, I'm going to do this, and then doing it, and then releasing it. And yeah, no, it was a pretty strong response right out of the gate. Submitting for awards, yeah, I think it was one of those everyone says this, I truly didn't think I had any chance of anything. It was just fill out the form, send in the thing. If I'd never hear anything back or don't get nominated, well, I'm right back where I am now. Who cares? Nothing was lost, basically, for submitting to those things. So I submitted to the Ennies, I submitted to the Indie Game Developer Network, and eventually to the Crit Awards. I did win the Ennie of those. And yeah, no, I did attend, and that was a pretty last minute decision. To be clear, I won a judge's choice, which I get the sense was sort of like honorable mentions, but
Okay.
each individual judge had theirs. And I respect the idea of like, we want to make sure this doesn't get lost in the mix. Like there's something noteworthy here, essentially. Like I like the concept because especially with the Ennies and especially any vote that's essentially a popular vote, the Kickstarter behemoths are just going to, like they're just, I mean, they've got a built-in mailing list of thousands or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm not knocking it. Like that's just the reality of the popular vote thing. So I appreciate that there was this mechanism for each judge to say, well, by the way, also look at this. And I think that was a big surprise. I was on vacation with my wife and stepson and started getting the notifications phone. I think it was July 4th or right around there.
Oh, wow.
A couple days before or after. And no, that was pretty surreal, and it kind of helped, honestly, that they listed the judges' choices first. So we were the very first thing on the list.
Yeah.
This is me and I think 4 other titles. And yeah, and the Gen Con, I believe, was in September. So in that interim time, I decided, yeah, I'm going to go. When the hell is this going to happen again? So yeah, I'll get up on a stage and take an award and give a little speech. It was pretty cool. And it was, again, excuse me, sort of a last minute decision. Talking about it with my wife. She was like, yeah, go get on a stage, make a speech. What are you talking about? Go do it. So yeah, and I got some encouragement from, I'm in the Discord for Gem Room Games, who's done Nine Lives to Valhalla and Duckborg and a few others. And
Okay.
yeah, it's kind of like, I don't have a Bannerless Games Discord. I pretty much just hang out in there and talk about game stuff. So they're very supportive as well. Like, yeah, go out there, do the thing. So I did that, and it was already doing pretty good in sales, both PDFs and then I distributed through Indie Press Revolution. Like it was a pretty steady seller. But I won't lie. The anything, like it shot it through the roof and pretty much kept it there. And I don't know. I've seen sentiments going around that nominations and awards don't really affect sales, and like I don't know, they sure did for me. Like it gave me room and flexibility, and to me that is kind of the value of awards for someone like me versus recognizing more marginalized creators or whatever, is that it earns space and latitude to try new stuff and get eyes on it when you do. Like it's, how does this help the next thing, basically? And I think that's true for basically anyone, really. And it was super cool. And I kind of went in, again, sort of ignorant of the larger scene of role-playing games for the most part, very, small view of it, but it was cool to be at Gen Con to see a floor that big of that many different kinds of games, to finally put a lot of faces to names, and meet people, although I did get deathly sick on day 2, so that was cut short. Not COVID, I tested, but man, I hadn't, I did 5 or 6 comic conventions for years, and then I did none for about 3. And then I went back to this one,
Your
and I
immune
masked.
system was out of practice.
Yeah, and like I masked everywhere, and it just didn't matter. Like I just got knocked flat. Yeah, that con crud. Like I used to be very proud of never getting it in my years in comics, and boy, it came back at me. Anyway, no, Gen Con was super cool, and it was just kind of like it was good to walk around a convention like that and not be one of the people behind a table, just kind of be
Yeah.
in, walk around and see how it's going, and like peace out after a day. But no, the Ennies were super cool. It was in this great, beautiful, I guess former train station hall that's now like offices, big, beautiful windows, and like a great atmosphere. And no, I've actually got it framed right there on behind this laptop screen.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's just it was one of those things. Like again, when will this ever happen again? Who knows? Probably never.
Yeah.
So yeah, just keep it going. And honestly, similar experiences. I didn't win on the indie game devs, but being able to put most innovative nominee on a cover doesn't hurt.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, similar with the Crit Awards. Um, no, it's been every time is a shock. And as for the submission process, yeah, I really do think it comes down to that. The why not? The worst comes to worst is you don't get nominated, and that's where you were. And it's everyone says this, but it's true. It's so much crapshoot. It's so much luck. It's so much the judge's mood that day. Like there's so many external factors you cannot control and that are devoid of merit. It's just how the chips fall type stuff that
Right.
easier said than done. Can't let it in. When you don't get that nomination, don't get that win, whatever. But if you do, great. Then your efforts paid off. And honestly, submitting for nominations it's usually fill out a Google form, takes you 10 minutes. Here's a PDF. Maybe send a physical copy if you've got one of those, and that's it. And then you might hear something in 2 months. And that is just it's such a low impact thing, and it qualifies for my personal rule is that I work on games every day, but my definition of working on games is extremely loose. Uh, so if one day all I do is submit for an award nomination, or I read through a book that's got some rules that are inspiring me or whatever, that counts as working on games that day. So I just kind of folded into this is part of the work. And it's just I try as much as I can to detach ego from it and just kind of look at that like, oh, it'd be great if this happens. If not, cool. I'm excited to see who does get nominated, like, and because it's going to help me spot games I haven't heard of before. And to just keep it kind of positive, hopeful, but not dependent on awards.
I like you noted there's so many things that are out of your control in these kind of scenarios, but it did make me think that at least at a quick glance, I think there's probably two pieces of that you can control that are pretty important. Number one, did you make a game that you are happy with, proud of, whatever, to start with? Aside from anything else, did you make the game that you wanted to make? And two, did you submit it or not? Like, you can at least control those two pieces of it, and hope for the best from there.
And it lines up pretty well with my 2 rules making games, my personal rules that I made for myself after working for 8 years in comics and losing a cartoonishly huge amount of money doing it. Because man, printing that stuff in page rate, that is not cheap business, and I lost a lot of money. And all my vacation time and all of it, just like everything I had, I poured into that. So I got into games and I said, 1, only make exactly what you want to make. Like if you're not feeling a project halfway through, like really not feeling it, kill it. And I've done that a few times. 2, don't lose money. You don't have to make money, you just don't lose money. And that's it. Those are the rules. And it kind of, it's that stark simplicity that feeds in that too. It makes sure I only put out games I'm proud of having made. To your point there. And then, just submitting towards is just very simple binary. Yes, no. Did you do this thing? And there's not even really a value judgment to it. It's just determining where your priorities are. And if you see that as a way to help you continue making what you want to make without losing money, then you do that. And that's the thing you do. I do think it's that simple, and I try to keep aware of when awards are popping up and submit to them when they do, if it makes sense for the game, if it makes sense for the award show, that kind of thing. And it's one of those where you build the habit by doing it. So now I know how to submit to the Ennies, so I just do it now. And what's the worst going to happen? Nothing. What's the best thing that can happen? Well, you get some recognition and a bunch of sales, and you get to throw something cool on the cover that helps it sell, which means IPR gets money, which means those retailers get money. Everyone's getting paid. It's great. We're helping everyone essentially at that point.
Yeah. Well, I know, yeah, we're, I think, a good little chunk over that initial time.
Mhm.
So I think that's covered most everything that I had thought of beforehand that I wanted to cover. But I did want to give you one last opportunity. If there's been a burning tip that you've been dying to mention to people that we have not hit on, or just
Mm.
parting words of wisdom beyond, honestly, the really great words that you just gave,
Yeah.
feel free to lay that knowledge on us.
Yeah, I
And if
just
not,
yeah, I just really just do the weird thing. Do everything I've had that's been a hit has been the weird thing that I didn't think anyone would like.
do the weird thing. That's a
You
great T-shirt slogan. I'm just saying.
Yeah, just like it is do the weird thing and something that you'd be pleased with. Like I make merch, but I only make merch because it's stuff I want to own personally. Like
Mm-hmm.
just I it you know I it just as long as you are happy with the output and you feel it's honest and you feel it's representative of you and you feel like it expresses something about you, just do it, man. Just go. Because I don't know, that's the one thing you can bring that no one else can. So not the super cool unique system or the wild world building or whatever. There's plenty of that out there, but it's if it's something that only you can produce, then it's worth making.
Yeah, I think that's a great parting note for everybody. So, folks, thanks for listening or viewing, depending on your medium of preference.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm Will from Gamenomicon. Jerod with Paroxysm by Design would normally be here, and our guest Ken. Where all can they find you?
Sure. Yeah, I know. I just kind of hit up Twitter a little bit there, but I'm on Twitter at Ken Lowry, KenLowery, and Bannerless Games, and I'm Ken Lowry pretty much everywhere else, Instagram, Blue Sky, whatever. I just go by my name, and then bannerlessgames.itch.io is kind of the central hub for all my games and links out to my shop and newsletter and things like that. Yeah, itch is home base.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.